residence, Lucas powered down his laptop, flipped the kitchen light off, and headed upstairs to get in bed. Maybe it was because of the liquor coursing through his body, or because he was so tired that he forgot to arm the home's alarm system. Upstairs, he started to walk down the long hallway toward the master bedroom's closed door, but he paused and turned around. Instead, he headed to the other side of the hallway where the kids' rooms were. Lucas peeked in on his son Luca, who was sound asleep and, as usual, on top of his comforter, wearing his favorite dinosaur pajamas. Lucas smiled to himself and shook his head. He didn't know what the kid had against being underneath covers, but with the way his mom was against the thermostat being over 74 degrees at night, he needed them. Lucas entered the room and tucked Luca underneath the covers, kissing his forehead before he left almost as quickly as he came. His next stop was his daughter Belle's room. He opened the door, turned on the light, and smiled. She was away at college, but with as much life as her bedroom had, it was like she was still there with them all. Pictures of herself with friends and posters of her favorite celebrities were sprawled all over her walls. The room smelled of clean linen, Belle's favorite scent, and her bed was neat, which it never would have been had she been home. She was his pride and joy. There was nothing he felt she couldn't do, and he felt in his heart that she would be something great, if she didn't want to take over his business, that was. He smiled to himself once more before flicking the light back off and shutting the door. The last thing he needed was for her to come home screaming about how someone had been in her room while she'd been gone. The last time that happened, Lucas' PlayStation ended up broken, and Lucas wasn't trying to shell out another $400 to replace another one. As he finally made his way to his master bedroom, he began to unbutton his shirt. He envisioned Taina groaning in her sleep and complaining about how he reeked of cheap liquor. "E and J are old friends. They give me the best advice," he would say, right before he pulled her close and buried his head in the back of her neck. Most people couldn't say that they had lucked out and married the love of their life, but Taina was everything and more for him. He felt like a blessed man whenever he made it back home to her. He made a promise to her the day they got married that she wouldn't regret taking his last name, and so far, he'd kept that promise. The door was slightly open, and he smirked to himself. She must have heard him in the hallway. "I always forget that you could hear a mouse's footsteps in your sleep," Lucas said upon entering the room, but he instantly froze when he saw that his wife was still sound asleep. However, standing over her, wearing a black ski mask, was a man Lucas didn't recognize. He was tall, about 6 feet, and Lucas didn't like how he was looking at Taina in her sleep. He walked up on the man, preparing to cause damage if need be. "What are you doing in my house?" he demanded to know in a hushed tone. "Get away from my wife!" Lucas was so focused on how closely the man in front of him was to the bed that he didn't notice the gun with an attached silencer in his hand. When he finally did, he stopped in his tracks, and the man in the ski mask finally looked his way. "You should have taken the deal, Lucas," the man said and sighed. "You should have just taken the deal. Now you have to pay." Thwop! Lucas hadn't realized that somebody else had come up from behind him until he felt the pain in the back of his head. The blow knocked him to the ground, and when he touched the throbbing point and looked at his fingers, he saw that they were covered in blood. Another man wearing a matching mask had entered the room, and he was holding a gun too. "Did you really think that you could tell me to fuck myself without consequences?" the first man asked and pointed his gun at Taina's sleeping body. "She's a deep sleeper, isn't she?" What he didn't know was that she probably had her sleeping plugs in, which she often wore when she had a long day. The man's finger wrapped around the trigger, and Lucas felt fear in the pit of his stomach that he'd never experienced. "Wait!" Lucas cried, putting his hands up and struggling back to his feet. "I'll give you anything. Whatever you want, you got it. 250,000? I'll have it wired to any account you want. Just please don't hurt my family. Please." The man paused and lowered the gun. He looked back at Lucas, and a smile formed in the mouth of the mask. "We figured you'd come around," he said, and Lucas took a small breath of relief. "But unfortunately..."